Get started maybe a few minutes early, but some people might trickle in here. My name's Nolan Brills with the Montana Teacher Retirement System. I'm the accounting fiscal manager. Been with TRS for 11-ish years now. So Darla Fitzpatrick is our communications manager, and she's been with TRS about as long as I have. So we do have Lexi Newcomer in the back. She's our communications specialist. And she's very new to TRS. So this is TRS for school business officials or managers. So we'll get started. The agenda today, we're going to talk about the employer responsibilities for reportable positions, the mandatory participation requirements, some working retiree requirements. We can do a brief overview of the TRS wage and contribution system, reporting deadlines, kind of reminders, and then some new information on non-contributing substitute teachers, and then there's going to be a brand new automated email that is going to go out to all schools here once we close the fiscal year. To kind of give you a final check. And feel free to just jump in with any questions at any time, just raise your hand or whatever. TRS was established in 1937 as a defined benefit pension plan, which is obviously different than a defined contribution plan. You're in a defined benefit pension plan, you get, retirees get like a set amount for the rest of their life at retirement versus, a defined contribution where you might have, a large amount of money that you've accumulated over the course of your career, but once that's gone, there is no more. So TRS currently has more than $5.1 billion in assets, and it's all managed by the Montana Board of Investments. We have over 20,000 full-time and part-time active members, many more inactive members, and we pay, about $444 million in benefits to a little over 18,000 benefit recipients each year. So, some of the TRS employers, obviously, you're mostly interested in all public school districts in Montana are part of the teacher retirement system, but there's also like the university system and some state agencies. It's really any political subdivision that employs like a TRS membership. That employs a person that meets the TRS membership criteria. But these are just some along with the public school districts. So. Responsibilities of the employers, you pick up the contributions each month from the gross pay and submit them to TRS through the TRS wage and contribution system to inform any new people at your school districts that of their rights and responsibilities related to TRS. All that information is on our website. And also, you really just report them to TRS now, and then they get, the new hire or the new member letter that we send out automatically to folks. You do have to report the name, Social Security, hours worked, gross earnings, and then obviously the contributions for all active members, and then obviously the new portion that we just kind of put into, into production in our system in January is to report the hours and gross earnings for all people who have opted out of TRS, and of course that's only your substitutes, part-time paras, and part-time teacher's aides that can opt out of TRS. No other position can opt out of TRS for the first 210 hours. And that actually all came about from this meeting, MASBO. We had a big, about 2 years ago, I think it was, we had a good conversation with a lot of school business managers that thought that TRS should be tracking that, and we agreed. So we have started that. So and we'll discuss that in a little more detail here in the presentation. So, okay. And Darla, feel free to jump in anytime if I forget something. So if you employ anyone that's a retired TRS member in a position reportable to TRS, you must report all the hours worked and gross earnings. Obviously, failure to comply with this could result in that person actually not being eligible to receive their benefit payment, or they may even, if they've been receiving their benefit payment, they may have to pay some of that back, so it's a really bad deal. Read all TRS communications. These are all on the website, the memos and notices. We do send those out by email, but so you're definitely going to want to keep your contact info updated in the TRS system. It's just when you log in, it's one of those tabs on the left. And then if obviously you have new people, feel free to add any new contacts. Really only can have like 2 contacts for TRS purposes in the system. You can always have more than that for like additional users, and those folks do get the emails too, correct? Yeah. And then obviously, if you have forms that, TRS forms, you're going to want to use the latest version of the forms, and then of course our fact sheets, all that information, we keep the most, latest up-to-date one on the website. So.
Nolan?
Yep.
Is there a place that you can go and see, and I haven't poked around enough about this, but see a list of all retirees, so that maybe someone moves to my school district and they start looking as a substitute and they don't tell me?
Yeah. So we have a handout. If you follow, it's the new hire procedure for every new person at your school. Mm-hmm. And it'll check you right through that list, and it should cover your bases in 99% of situations. So in that situation, if you were to look somebody up, you go to, when you log in, you click on member search edit, mm-hmm. put in their social. It'll come up as this member status as TRS retiree or retired member, so then you would know. But that's all in that new hire procedure, so it kind of covers all your bases on that situation.
And that's under forms? It is.
Yeah, the new hire procedure is under forms, and if you expand the employer forms, it's under there. So, but we have some handouts too if you want to take one.
I can let you know what's recently changed when we get
answers. Yeah. Required TRS members is, of course, like all your administrators, of course, any teachers. Really, it's anyone in an educational service capacity for at least 210 hours in a single fiscal year. And the only ones who are really that are in an educational service capacity that can opt out for the first 210 hours are your substitutes, part-time paras, and part-time teachers' aides.
And only if they're not already.
Right, yeah. And so if you go through that new hire procedure and you look up like a new sub at your school and they're in a status that already has a TRS account balance, then they have to be reported if they're, no matter how many hours they're working.
So like if we have a teacher who has a spouse who wants to come coach, do we need to report TRS on them?
So coaching is...
They get paid like once for the season?
Right, so if it's like a member of the community that is just coaching and they don't have a TRS, they're not in a TRS status, like they don't have a TRS account already, then you would follow that extra duty like stipend calculation, and as long as the stipend is under a certain amount, like we have a Excel spreadsheet that we can send you where you would just put in some pieces of information like what your first time teacher salary is at your school district, and then what the stipend amount is, and as long as that calculation comes out to under 210 hours, then you just don't report them to TRS. So I would say, 9 times out of 10, the stipend amount is not going to amount to enough to report them to TRS unless they do multiple sports, because then you have to add the 2 or 3 stipends together, however many sports they do, or if they're like the head football coach, then maybe that stipend, or the head, one of the head coaches, then that stipend might be the 210 hour threshold. But they don't get to like opt out per se. Coaches that they're either over 210 hours and they have to be reportable, or they're under 210 hours and they can't be reported. So
Can we email you for that spreadsheet?
yes, yep.
There's a fact sheet that we sent out in a memo not long ago, but it's on the fact sheets part of the website, and in there it mentions to call Mullen for that. So
Yeah.
we didn't want to.
Yeah, you can email me for me.
We didn't want to put it on the website and have someone come across it and not understand what it really was for. So we wanted to make sure it was kind of only accessible through that channel. So.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. Who's excluded from TRS membership? Obviously, anyone who's really not in an educational service capacity at the school, like cafeteria staff. Your positions obviously would be reportable to PERS. Now, some of this, these are actually, if you just have hall monitors or just have playground aides, those things, those are actually PERS positions, and they're not reportable to TRS. However, with a new law that was just passed, if you do have teachers who are doing that as an extra duty, then that can be reported, to TRS now going forward. So, like cross guard duties and things. So anyone who's kind of supervising, even if they're not educationally supervising them, if they're supervising students.
Same as a para?
Yeah, para would definitely, if they're in those positions on the side, yeah, like if they do extra duties of, I guess I don't know what you mean by saying with a para.
If a para is doing playground duty.
Yes.
The legislative bulletin that we just sent out, not long after the legislative session, actually we sent that one by email and regular mail just to make sure all the districts got it. But in that, it discusses that in detail. And then there was a clarification that came out a week or so later based on inquiries we got from a couple of school districts about how they were handling it differently. And so there's further guidance on that.
Yeah. So,
What if we have a person that's a para 9 months out of the year for the school year, and then in the summer they want to be a full-time custodian? How should we
that's
do
a
that?
totally separate, so the custodian position is reportable to PERS.
So they can be under 2 retirements?
Yeah, they can definitely be, you could have 2 different position codes. Someone could be a para for half the day and a custodian for half the day, and those would be reportable to TRS and PERS separately, so.
Just to clarify the kind of the new piece of the law where if it's already a teacher, administrator, para, teacher's aide that's doing these extra duties for student supervision during the school day, the reason that was changed was that in some cases that little extra amount they were getting paid was not getting reported to either system. And so that's why it was put into law that we want to make sure those teachers or paras get credit for that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So what if we had a para that before that they had done the extra duty stuff, and so they chose to be a part of both retirement systems? Are we good to continue still reporting it that way?
Yeah, so they kind of get like grandfathered in.
Okay.
So only new, like if you have that situation where you were reporting those extra duties to PERS, you can continue reporting them to PERS.
Okay.
But if you have somebody brand new that is say a para, and you're going to be reporting them to TRS, and then they decide to be a cross guard duties or whatever, then that would be reportable now to TRS and not PERS going
Okay.
forward.
The
Yeah.
clarification memo we sent out after that legislative bulletin talks
about that
talks
too.
through the three, there's like 3 bullet points, if this, then that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should be pretty-
Which they would probably, you know, those newer people would want anyways, because it'll give them more service credit.
So I fall under PERS, but we had a teacher go on maternity leave, and so I subbed for like her PE and all that. Would that compensation I need to go to TRS for being that?
So unless you know, opted out, or, you know, I mean, obviously you might have been under the 210 hours in a year, you know, so, I mean,
30 days.
yeah, so if you're under 210 hours, you can sign the Form 106 to just opt out.
And then just report.
But if you're gonna go over that as a substitute, no matter, even if your main position is, you know, being the business manager, you would, you know, then you're mandatory if you go over 210 hours.
Okay.
So.
And that decision should be made before you start working, not after.
Yeah, just for the moment.
And then, of course, again, you can only opt out if you're not already a TRS member, because if you already have a TRS account, then you just have to be reported going forward. Go ahead.
So you mentioned coaches in 80 in the last slide,
Yeah.
and ours are usually part-time. So for instance, they have a 30 to 45 day contract, then where do they fall under?
You mean like your athletic director?
Athletic director and coaches. So
Well, the coaches are just paid by a stipend, right? They're not, yeah. So then you do the stipend calculation on those coaches. If you know, if they're already, I mean, a lot of coaches are already like they're a teacher and then they coach.
Oh, okay.
So then that's already reportable no matter what, yeah.
Okay.
But if you have someone who's, like I said, a member of the community who just coaches
Yeah.
for your school, then you do that stipend calculation. It's calculating extra duty service credit, and it's one of our fact sheets. And then if you need the spreadsheet, you can call me or email me and I can send you the spreadsheet that you just put in some certain variables and then it'll spit out how many hours for that person, you know. And then if it's under 210 hours, you just don't report it. If it's over 210 hours, then you have to report it.
The athletic directors are a reportable position.
Yeah, athletic director, if they're, I mean, especially it sounds, even if it's 45 days, you know, then they definitely will be over the 210 hours. So you report that on day one, yeah.
So, extra duty hours, so if you have teachers who are working games, like taking tickets and, you know, all line people and all that kind of stuff, is that reportable to TRS?
Yeah, so I mean, the ticket takers, just ticket takers, that's not really like supervising students, so that's not reportable. You know, I mean, do they, I mean, yeah, so that's not, that would be reportable to PERS if it's even reportable at all to either school, you know, so, or to either systems, right?
Right now, we're not reporting that kind of
Yeah.
It really comes down to, is it during the regular school functions and is it for supervising students?
Right.
Crossing guard, yeah.
Yeah.
Recess, that kind of thing.
money. Okay.
But you could call me if you have a situation, so,
Sure.
I mean, we could go through every hypothetical situation you want, but just, if you're not sure about whatever it is, then, and I would say, you know, 90% of the time you're gonna be sure, but if you know, have a specific situation that you wanna talk through, then we can talk about that, so.
So lunch duty falls under that?
Pardon me?
Like lunch duty, that falls under?
Yeah, so like, if it's like a lunchroom supervisor,
Yeah.
then sure, like, I mean, as in like, if you're doing the students, but if you're serving, like, if you're the
No,
lunch
like the
person.
teachers.
The monitoring,
Yeah.
Yeah, like monitoring lunch, but if you're like actually serving the cafeteria staff, that's PERS, yeah, so it kind of depends on what you're talking about. Which substitute teachers are part-time must participate, so really, those who already have, we already kind of went over this, those who already are TRS members and have contributions on account, if you follow that new hire procedure that's on the website, we have the handouts too here, then this should cover your bases on that. And those who are not TRS members, But they may actually elect to be TRS members from day one. So really you kind of should be giving all your substitute teachers, if you follow the new hire procedure and they don't come up as already a TRS member, then you should be giving them the option, do you want to opt in or opt out with Form 106, and then you keep that on file.
Do you recommend we do that every school year?
Yes.
Beginning of the year?
Well, yeah, I mean, you really don't have to if they've already opted out.
If they're already your
That's kinda-
employee.
I think it'd be a good practice to do it every year, so that's.
And this is, it used to be longer, but we actually shortened it to 1 page. And step 2, and I feel the need to apologize because your system is really giving a window into our system, and so some of the language in there is a little bit cryptic because it means something to us. And so we have bullet points here. If it says member terminated, cashed out, that means they used to be a member, they took their money, so technically they're not members anymore. So it just lists, if you see the status, it means this. If you see the status, it means that. Because it isn't super intuitive. So this is what you want to follow.
I just want to mention, because I got caught on this, maybe somebody else will too. Last year I entered some, like, we're really small and our librarian or our music teacher comes once or twice a month. So when I put them in Foxy, our 2 choices are part-time or part-time under 210 hours. And I thought to myself, oh, they're part-time under 210 hours, not realizing it didn't take TRS out. So they were only part-time, so it wasn't very much, but we got mailed for that.
Yeah.
Because I chose the wrong option in Foxy.
Yeah. So that to me sounds like a Foxy issue. I mean, they should have
I should have
hourly,
caught it,
part-time,
but-
you know, like they should have a couple different options. But, you know, obviously, yeah, I mean, those would be reported. So I don't.
Somebody else could deal with that too, but I got mailed because I wasn't paying attention.
And
Sure.
really in our system, part-time means that you have a part-time contract.
Yeah.
Hourly means hourly. And so he's
Yeah.
kind of mixing and matching David Bardwell.
Yeah, if you want to, you know, if you pay anyone by the hour, you should be reporting the wages and the hours. If they're full-time, even if they work 40 hours a week or whatever, our system will give them full-time service credit, but you still would report the hours. You don't want to call somebody full-time just because you think I mean, if you pay them by the hour, report them as hourly. If you pay them, if they're part-time contract, you know, some people actually sign contracts, which is pretty rare, so you guys shouldn't run into this a lot, but, you know, they might sign a contract and they get X amount of dollars for 0.5 FTE as a contract. So that's when it's part-time, and then full-time obviously is your full-time certified, you know, staff.
So does the 210 hours reset every school year?
Yeah.
Oh, if once you're a member, they don't get to do that again next year.
Oh, yeah. No, like, so once somebody's a member, then they have to report it going forward, no matter what. Unless they cash out, and then it starts. So yeah, it's very. I mean, you just have to kind of follow that new hire procedure every time. But yeah, I mean, if you had somebody who was a sub and they opted out and they worked, you know, 180 hours this year, that 210 starts over the next year. So then they, you know, they could work if they go to, you know, 200 hours the next year, and then it starts over again. You know, so I mean. Yeah, it does kind of start over every year in a sense, but not if they ever become a member, then they have to stay a member unless they cash out through the summer. So we already kind of talked about this. Those who only do stipend work like coaches, this is probably most of the time this is what you're going to run into is coaches from your community. So that you would not have them fill out Form 106 because that's only for the subs, part-time teachers, aides, and part-time paras. So then you would do this calculating and reporting extra duty service credit calculation. That's the name of the fact sheet on our website, and then I also have an Excel spreadsheet that is, you know, you could use if you want. If you want to give me a call or send me an email, I can send you that
Is
spreadsheet.
anybody in the room from the Butte School District? Because that's who originally created the calculation and sent it to us, and we're like, this is great. So we redesigned it kind of for,
Yeah.
but yeah, so.
And then, of course,
thank
keep
the
in-
Butte School District.
Keep in mind that if you have like teachers who are coaching, it doesn't matter. That you don't even have to do the calculation, you just report the wages because, or you report the stipend because they're already TRS members. So the TRS, so we're just going to go through some of these, the TRS new hire procedure, procedures for reporting non-contributing subs and paras, and then calculating. Oh, these are the handouts. Is that what you're doing here?
I just want to make sure we hit those. I don't have handouts for all of that, but I do have, because some of this has changed recently, the new hire procedure is now 1 page with 4 steps.
Sure.
This notice was about the reporting the non-contributing hours for substitute teaching, and it's got screenshots and everything to walk you right through that. And then this is something else we'll talk about later. So.
Go ahead.
Can I, so does the system, just to clarify, does the system, so in Yellowstone County, this, I'm the one that came to you about the 210 hours
Okay.
and subs. So when someone is keying in, let's say they sub at Elysian 100 hours, and that's what I've been putting in, and they're also subbing at Canyon Creek, which is a different school district, and does the system automatically then, it hits and says that person did 100
Yeah.
hours at Canyon, 100 hours at Elysian, or 150 hours at Elysian, 100 there, so it hits over that 210, so the system automatically does that for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of,
report.
yeah, that's one of the reasons why. Yeah, as long as all the schools
Or-
and school
Yeah.
districts are reporting their non-contributing, you know, people who opted out of TRS, as long as they're reporting them properly, then it will, even if it's 3 or 4 different schools or, you know, different organizations, they would all add up. And then each school that person has been reported by would get an email saying, the next time that this person is reported, you must withhold contributions.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, is the next time instead of, because
Yeah, it's not, it
usually
doesn't
you
go
go hit
retro.
roll and you hit it and go, well, I didn't
Yeah.
take it out, so it's the next time. right?
Exactly. So in actuality, you know, somebody could work like 200 hours or be at 200 hours, and then they could work 20 hours here, 30 hours here, 40 hours here, and they're way over 210 with all those combined, but that's okay. They were non-contributing at that time, and the next month, all 3 of those schools would get an email saying, okay, now this person's over 210 hours, you must withhold the next time you pay them.
Fantastic.
And that was a pretty lengthy conversation in-house for us, like, you know, how specific does it have to be? And it is not practical at all to expect you guys to withhold for a partial month or anything, so that we put it's in statute that first of the fall of the month.
And I won't go into a whole bunch of detail on the new hire procedure because it is very straightforward, but basically you need to, when you hire new people, you just need to determine, are they in a TRS reportable position? That should be real straightforward 90% of the time, but if not, give us a call if you're not sure. Because TRS, actually PERS defers to TRS on those issues, whether, you know, is this position PERS or TRS, then they kind of defer to us to make that determination. We can send an official determination. But once you have that determined and they're in a TRS reportable position, then you would look them up in our system, and if they're already a TRS member, or they're in a status where they have a TRS account, then they're reportable no matter what, if they're in the TRS, you know, so, because you've already determined that they're in a TRS position, and now they have a TRS account, now they're reportable no matter what. If they're not, and they're a sub, part-time para, or part-time teacher's aide, then you would have to go through the Form 106 and decide whether they want to be reported or they don't want to be reported, and then you report them either as non-contributing or as a contributing TRS member right from day one. So. This just kind of goes into, like, there is an actual official definition of earned compensation. you know, it's basically just gross pay, but it's, you know, the official definition is, you know, remuneration paid for the services of a member out of funds controlled by an employer before any pre-tax deductions under the IRS. So it's basically just gross pay. Just an FYI, and we will go over this in the next session with the STARS Act payments. I think they're referred to as certain other titles, but any payments that are to increase teachers' pay are going to be reportable. They're going to be included in earned compensation. Some of the things that are not included would be like employer-paid premiums, you know, for health insurance or dental or any other insurance. If you are paying cash in lieu of, or if the employee is allowed to choose to have insurance or not have insurance, if there's cash payments, that's not reportable to TRS. If it's in lieu of benefits or any reimbursements, basically, you know, if any schools are reimbursing for cell phones or you know, lodging, any of that stuff for travel of any kind, then that is not reportable to TRS. But if you have questions on any of that, let us know. Employer contribution rates are not changing for the next two, so July 1st here coming up, everything stays the same. 8.15% for employee contributions and 9.47% for regular TRS members. Obviously, working retiree rate is just employer contribution rates, and it's still 11.85%. This has not been signed as of today by the governor, but there is House Bill 924 that if it passes and gets signed, we're about 80% sure that the governor's going to sign it.
Wasn't our bill, but.
Yeah, it wasn't our bill, but if they do sign that into law, then starting in fiscal year 2028, so it'd be July 1st, 2027, those contribution rates are going to go up by 0.1% every year for the next 20 years after that. So, and then our contribution rates are always displayed on our website. So member contribution, we just talked about this. They're 8.15%. No legislation changes that at this point. Obviously, Tier 1 and Tier 2 members, there is a certain point where if we were like 90% funded, they could change the rates and actually have Tier 1 members pay a little bit lower rate, but we probably won't see that anytime in the near future. So, and we would obviously send out a lot of communication before that ever happens. So, just a brief, has anybody not been in the TRS reporting system in this room? Probably not yet. So this is what it looks like. Of course, you all know. This is where you spend most of your time in employer reports. It'll always have a list of all your reports for the fiscal year. You could do a drop down on the box and change it to any fiscal year you want, or you could do it by calendar year with the radio buttons on top. Member history will show you the member history for TRS for any of your employees. You can't look up any teacher in the state, so don't try. But you could look up any of your people and see what their member history is. This is where you look when you do the new hire procedure under member search edit. You can put them in their social and then you can see what their status is. This is where, does anybody not do report upload? Does anybody still kind of copy forward? Or so you can like create new reports by just hitting this plus button and create them from scratch. Or you can go into old reports and copy them forward and then change them or modify them. But most people do the upload report where you have an actual upload file that comes out of your reporting system or your payroll system, and then it's uploaded into TRS. There's the term pay calculator. We have lots of information on the website about termination pay. if anybody has any questions, Kathy Leonard in our office is the kind of the expert on the term pay calculator and the forms that need to be in and when those need to be in. Once it comes to actually reporting those term pay amounts on your report, you can certainly call me, Allie Holland, or Christian Ward in our office. Employer balance is if you have like an overage or shortage, you can obviously see that on the system and see how that was derived, you know. So if you have multiple months of we were short this month, over this month, you know, you can see how that all accumulated. Hopefully you don't have that situation. If you do, let us know, and if you're having issues with that. But employer contact, please make sure you have the correct information in here. If your email changes or your phone number changes, that's the only way we know how to get a hold of you and send you a lot of, you know, we do send periodic newsletters, emails, memos, and that's where we will send those to. The reporting tab has several nice reports that you can create. If you have like working retirees, there's a working retiree one that lets you know how close they're getting to their earnings limit. If you have auditors and you need like a detailed breakdown of your fiscal year reports, that there is, you can just, there's no really wrong answers in there. You can go around and go in there and run those reports anytime you want and just look at them and see what they are. So if you are a bigger school or even a smaller school that wants to have more people in the TRS system, there can only be one online administrator for each school. That's probably you folks, hopefully sitting here. But then if you have someone who works under you or with you, they can go create an account, and then you can grant them access with this through the additional users tab. And then this one really doesn't matter unless you have multiple schools that you are reporting for.
Does anyone here do payroll for lots of different, so you use that?
Yes, there you go. So you probably already know how to use that. So this is just kind of a brief, you know, once you do create a report, it sounds like most of you would upload your report. So once that's uploaded, you would run the report. You know, if there's errors or warnings, you can look at those and fix. You have to fix them if they're an error. If you don't know how to fix them, you can call TRS. But then once those are fixed, it's not just going to automatically, you have to run your report again because it's still going to show as an error until you actually hit run report again. So, so you run the report, fix any errors, run the report again, and then as long as it's all green across the top and it says ready to submit, you submit the report to TRS. You'd be amazed how many, when I send out my monthly, like, hey, you haven't submitted your last month's report. People have created the report, everything's ready to go, but they forgot to hit submit.
And just as a little semantic tip, our software developers use the words run report on that button, but really you're validating. Because your system, it doesn't talk to our database until you do that. So you're just saying, check my work.
Yeah.
And then it'll return some errors, and then you fix those, but you have to talk again to our database. Does that make sense? So if you think of that as validate or check my work, it makes more sense to me than run report.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Reporting deadlines. Okay, so each wage and contribution report is due by the 15th of the following month. And then, of course, all of your fiscal year reports for this fiscal year are due by July 15th. So that's if you had any errors or issues or adjustments you needed to do, anything you caught, that needs to be submitted by July 15th. We will close our fiscal year and there will be no previous year reports able to be done at some point shortly after July 15th. So,
Is there a report that we run to know what we report on the 15th, or how do we know what we're reporting? You choose a report.
Yeah, so I mean, it'd just be
You're
like,
saying like for the fiscal year? You have to
Yeah,
report
you-
something by July 16th?
oh, no, I'm saying like, you just need to
Oh,
have
right.
all of your
Okay.
wages and contributions reported to TRS.
Okay, I thought there was
Um,
some.
no. No, there's not like a one big report. I'm just well, I guess what I mean is your June report is due by July 15th. But if you had any issues that were anywhere throughout the year, those, you won't be able to fix those with an adjustment in a previous fiscal year once we close it down. Because once, by the time like say July 20th hits, you will not be able to even do a fiscal year 25 report. Because so anything you do will have to be July 2025, which is fiscal year 2026, and you'll be able to have to do it in that fiscal year. So, I don't know how clear as mud, but sorry.
Has to be cut off.
So that's the deadline for this year is Tuesday, July 15th. TRS has to close out. That's why we have to close out the fiscal year. We do those net pension liability numbers and amounts, and if a school were to miss like a whole report, those could be significantly off, which really affects you as an employer more than TRS. But so remit payments, another reminder, remit by ACH instead of check. If you're not doing it by ACH yet, then I strongly encourage you to switch to ACH. It's cheaper, safer, more efficient. There's no lost checks ever in the mail. So it's real easy. You just go and print off Form 140 and fill it out and send it in. You can send it to me by email or hard copy. If you use the insurance deduction reporting system, then the changes, like if you have changes in the premiums or anything, those need to be updated in the system by the 16th of the prior month. So if it's changes are effective July 1st, then those need to be in no later than June 16th. So this one I had a lot of conversations. Report wages on a when earned basis. So hopefully just everyone has different. I wish we lived in a world where all the schools had the same pay cycles, but we don't have that. So you should be reporting to TRS if those people earned their wages in June, then those should be reported on a June TRS report, and I would guess that would happen sometime in early July. But you'd be amazed how many I get a June report on June 1st, so I don't know how, obviously the main thing is that you're not reporting your hourly people for more than 1 month in any given month, because, if you're not reporting on a when earned basis, you can run into at the end of the year where it's we have this hourly person who worked 200 hours in May and 100 hours in June, and we reported it all in 1 month, and they were shorted a bunch of service credit, and if you did that year over year over year, they could be shorted, several years worth of service credit by the end of their career. So
Our system caps it at, 140?
140 hours is a full time for a month, so yeah, if somebody worked 140 and then 100 and you reported that as 240 hours, they really didn't get that service credit that they should have got. So, so if you're not reporting on a when earned basis and you want to talk about it with me, because maybe you pay every 2 weeks, or maybe your pay cycles just are odd, and you want to talk about it, then we certainly can. But the main point is that you're not doubling anybody up for their wages and hours in any given month. And we already talked about this, but for TRS purposes, full-time means a full-time contracted teacher, part-time means a part-time contracted teacher, and hourly is anyone that you pay by the hour. So, we definitely have schools that, I talk to the business manager and they say, well, the person works 160 hours a month. So, and I'm like, yeah, but you pay them by the hour, so they should be, our system will give them the proper service credit if you report that as 160 hours every month. So if you pay them by the hour, make sure you're reporting them on by the hour. And then of course, any non-contributing people, make sure that you're reporting their hours and not, because there are some, does anybody pay their subs by the day, like a daily rate? Make sure that's being converted into hours once it's in the TR. So if your system, if it's Black Mountain, Tyler, whatever it is, if it's not making that conversion for you when you upload it to TRS, you know, you can't report somebody for like $500 in wages and like 3.5 hours. You know, so that needs to be converted into the hours.
And in TRS, it's 7 hours is a day.
7 hours is full time for us, but it really doesn't matter what you choose to. If you guys call 7.5 hours a day, that's fine. You can convert it, you know, those days into 7.5 hours of days each day. That's either way, just as long as they're being converted to hours. Oh, Kathy talked about that. Yep, we talked about this. So the reason for all that is, you know, obviously if you're reporting days on accident instead of hours, you know, they might work like 25 or 30 days, you know, or 35 days, and you're going to have 35 hours in our system. But it was well over 210 hours, you know. Another reminder is just to pay attention to your overages and shortages. You should know why every time that you submit a report with an overage or a shortage. Before you even submit it, you should probably know why you have that overage or shortage and how to fix it. Going, you know, with either the next report, or if it's way over and you screwed something up and you need TRS to pay you back, that's fine, just call us. But you know, definitely we do have some schools that run like a habitual over, short, over, you know. I mean, and we need to get those cleared up. So this one I get like probably 30 or 40 questions about every single year at this time. Do I pay TRS on sick or vacation leave? No, it's never ever reportable as wages unless it's a TRS working retiree. That's the only time you would ever report that as wages, that sick or vacation payout. It does come into play in your term pay calculator if you have people retiring through your school. If you have people retiring, that sick and vacation payout goes into their termination calculator, but it's still never reportable as just wages, and there's no contributions withheld on those. Did I cover all that? Yeah, do employer. Yeah, so just generally the TRS working retiree rule, if you employ any TRS working retirees, then you should definitely be reviewing those rules regularly. The Form 146 that goes along with that is due to TRS every year on every one of your working retirees, not just like one time. So at the end of this year, once, like I said, we'll close the M-Trust or our pension administration system for the fiscal year. Usually it happens sometime like July 20th, right around July 20th. And then you guys will all get an email saying, here's what your wages, your TRS reported wages were for fiscal year 24. And then here's what they were for 25, and here's the percent change, whether it's positive or negative. Does this sound accurate to you? Our information is always only as good as what all of the schools provide to TRS. So if you have reports that you could then run out of your system, out of your payroll system to make sure that those numbers sound and seem accurate, then that would be the time to do it, is to, you know, because we definitely want to catch any errors that we can, But really, we have no way until like Chris Fish, our auditor, comes and audits you of making sure that all the wages and contributions were truly reported to TRS correctly. So that's going to be a new, it's kind of like satisfies like our auditors, you know, like they want a little bit more internal controls, if you will, or external controls. But you know, we'll send out an email, and if you could just somehow check those wage amounts and make sure that it sounds accurate to you, that would be great. So, and if something is way off, then you definitely want to get a hold of me as soon as you could, and we can discuss that. So, and that's you know, the very last thing was just that Chris Fish is our TRS auditor. She's been in her position for a little over three years-ish, close to 3 years, coming up on 3 maybe. But she does about 36 employer audits every year, so she tries to do about 3 per month. You know, obviously some are small schools and they're quick and easy. Some are really big schools and they take a long time. So, but she's gonna, if you ever hear from Chris, then you know, everyone should get audited, hopefully at least like once every 10 years going forward. So if you haven't been audited, you could probably expect a call from her at some point. And if you have, then you probably won't hear from her for a while. So, and I think that's really all I had.
I have one more thing.
Oh.
This was sent out in our little end of year reminder thing. It was a suggestion from Laura from Culbertson.
Oh, sure.
She said, hey, Ampera has a handout for someone who's leaving employment. They want to know what to do with their contributions on account. Do you guys have one? And we said, no, but we should. So we actually made one. I know it's too late, school's already out, but we do have one. So.
Yeah, and it's on the, again, TRS forms, and it's under employer forms, and it's...
It might not be there yet, but it's on the employer's...
Is that what it's called, just leaving employment?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and it's in that last memo. It's also...
I missed what it's called.
It's just called leaving employment.
Oh, leaving.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so if you have any TRS people that you've reported to TRS and they're leaving employment, you could, you know...
They might ask you, what do I do with my TRS? And
yeah.
you're like, here, read this.
Yeah, only, I mean, it's just an extra tool for you. It's not anything mandatory that you have to do.
No, it was just a good idea, we thought.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions just generally about anything TRS?
The new hire procedure is here, and then also the actual procedure of how to record those non-contributing hours if you do have a substitute teacher who is eligible to opt out, as we, it's not really the official term, but you
If
can
the teacher is going to retire, we need to know soon, right? So we can budget.
Well, there is
money
so
in.
that's all covered in our termination, like our termination pay or our
Yeah.
retiring fact sheets and stuff. So you might want to look at those. But the main deadline is there's a form 129 if they want to choose, like they can do a what is the word?
well, it's, what it does,
Irrevocable election. There it is.
Yeah.
The word was escaping me, but they will choose an irrevocable election for either option 1 or 2, and then if they choose that option 1 or 2, then if they fill out form 129 at least 90 days in advance, then and that gets submitted to TRS, then they can pay those. Those term pay buybacks tax deferred with tax deferred dollars, which is obviously beneficial to them. So really, like, you should hopefully know whether someone at least 90 days, but people should be in touch with TRS well before 90 days before they're going to retire.
We actually have there's a flow chart, and again, thanks to your colleagues, Jane Knudsen, who was with Malta School, she and I collaborated on this. She had been using a similar thing she made to help train the rest of you on how to handle termination pay, and we said, let's build something that can be official from TRS. So it's actually a little 2-page thing, but it just kind of walks you through your part of it, because that's not something we aren't expert in at all. So it was a great collaboration with her to be able to draw a picture for you. Here's what you have to do, and it depends on, did they sign that form, what did they elect? And the form itself, that irrevocable election, is for them to, quote unquote, invest that termination pay in TRS to bump up their salary.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's the
very,
purpose.
very good deal for the teachers, and so that's why most people are gonna choose like option one, because that's the biggest benefit.
But you have to pay contributions on that, so that's why.
And are you still allowing that a few years now in advance to their retirement? I know for a while it was
Absolutely.
frowned upon for them to put it in advance.
Right, it's because of that word irrevocable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If
So
they
it's-
don't know what that amount's gonna be, then they don't
Yeah.
know how much they're gonna have to pay, they might have to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
Because contributions might exceed, the necessary contributions might exceed the
Right.
pay itself.
People who have been teachers for a long, 30 plus years, if they have significant accumulated sick or vacation leave, or you have a retirement incentive that's significant, they certainly almost always will have some out of pocket if those
Yeah.
if those
I have some
amounts are.
teachers that have had it on the
Yeah.
file for 15 years.
Yeah, no, it's still a huge benefit to them, so
Yeah.
they still probably will choose to do it, but
Yeah.
That's a really good question though, thank you for bringing that
yeah,
up.
so we don't encourage to do it like 3 or 4 years in advance, but
Yeah.
certainly, the year that they're retiring,
For
it
sure.
should be in, at least 90 days. Well, it has to be
Has
at
to
least
be,
90. Yeah, and
And that's the
hopefully
IRS.
it's in before
Yeah.
that, so.
So
And-
I manage a small school, so, and possibly having a teacher retire next year. Is there, I thought the school contributed to something?
Yeah, there's employee and employer contributions due
If
on a
when they-
termination pay calculator.
Okay.
So you'd have to do the basically you need to do Form 129 with the member at some point next year, next school year, and it has to be in at least 90 days before he retires, or he or she.
So we have to come up with some money, right, if they retire?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we want to budget that in,
Right.
right?
Yeah, you would want, you
That's what I
can do
wanted
a
to know.
termination pay calculator with Kathy, or you could just do it online for that member and just see
Okay.
roughly what it would be. But if you have questions about that, call Kathy Leonard and she'll say, oh yeah, you can do like a mock-up version or a fake, It doesn't have to be exact. You're not going to ever get it to the penny until you know exactly those term pay amounts.
But that's a very good point, that calculation is great for budgeting because, it's like any other earned income. If they're saying, I want to take my term pay and use it to bump up my income, then contributions there's no such thing as, getting credit without
Yeah,
having
free
paid
benefit
contributions.
increase.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or anything?
Yes. Shift in topic. So this is my first year having to do year-end reporting and all that sort of stuff. For our option 2 teachers, when they receive their direct deposits in like July and August, do I still need to report those before July 15th to TRS?
When they receive their what?
So we have to have all of our payrolls and stuff done by June 30th, but they aren't getting their ACH direct deposit to them until July and August, but we've already paid it and uploaded it and that sort of stuff. So what I do,
So they're like your contracted full-time teachers?
Yes, so
And
they elected to get their salary as a 12-month salary as opposed to 10
Oh,
months.
sure, yeah.
So when I do the TRS reporting for them before
Yeah,
July
because they
16th
already
as well
earned
too.
that
Okay,
in the school year they just worked.
okay, but I
So
would,
now you're paying them, regardless of how you're
Yep.
paying them, it needs to be in this
the fiscal year,
Yeah.
okay.
And our system knows that there's those
Those
9,
options.
10, and 12 month
Yeah.
calculations.
So you're gonna pay the contributions to TRS before you actually pay the
Yep.
people their
So
salaries.
would I then have to do 3 separate reports for each of those payrolls?
You
or
can
would I
do
be
it
able to
either
combine
way.
them? Okay,
So
okay,
you could do a regular June and then a June adjustment and another June adjustment,
okay, yeah,
but they all have to be June.
okay,
So, and
okay.
they have to be in before July 15th.
Yep, okay,
So, or your system, Black Mountain,
Yep.
should be able to combine all
all
of
of
those
those together for
into
just one
one
report, okay.
if you want.
I
So
just
it's
didn't know how
It's
it-
totally up to you, you just have to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, I just didn't know how it would affect their service FTE and the service
No.
years.
And
for
that's
that,
the
so-
difference between the hourly people, they are capped, but the full-time, we know they're full-time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So when you have those, because those are your contracted full-time
Yep.
teachers, so they're gonna get one FTE, so they're gonna get 1 year of service credit no matter
no matter what, okay, okay. That makes sense.
Good question.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to make sure, so if you have a teacher who's resigning, not retiring, and they're getting their sick or discretionary leave paid out, you cannot withhold TRS from that specific part of their wage.
Correct.
Okay.
But the last pay for their real work, yeah, that's reportable, of course.
Because we
But not the
combine
sick and vacation payout. Any accumulated sick and vacation, if you pay that out as a school when somebody leaves your district, just that portion is not reportable to
It's
TRS.
not wages.
It's not wages, unless it's a working retiree. So
Yeah, yeah.
if it's a working retiree,
Unless.
So you said that the retirement, if a teacher's retiring, they have to have the paperwork in 90 days before. But sometimes they don't.
just that the Form 129 needs to be at least 90 days if they want to pay it. What's that?
What if that didn't happen?
Then they can't pay their termination pay, buyback, tax deferred. They can still pay it, they can still do the termination pay buyback, but you would pay out their accumulated sick and vacation and retirement incentive, whatever you guys have, and then they would pay TRS after tax.
I didn't know. One of my good friends had that happen. She had 27 years or something, so her amount of termination pay was huge, but she missed that deadline, but she still wanted the benefit. So she wrote an enormous check for the entire member
But it's like-
contributions due.
I feel like that's sad that the teacher is going to have to get sort of punished for something I didn't know about.
That's not your
But
fault.
they should
That's
know.
not your
No,
fault.
but it's not your fault either.
No, she has to be an informed retiree too.
Yeah, that's not,
Yeah.
it is there, because if that person had been in touch with TRS,
They would have known.
they would have known,
Mhm,
yeah.
big
for
time.
sure.
Here's what happens.
Because I didn't know till today.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that
our-
should,
So if they contacted our staff and they say, I'm thinking about retiring, they can tell in our
Oh,
system
yeah.
if they have a Form 129 on file or not, and if they've been given an estimate or not. And if they have not, they do it and they say, here's the form you have to
Yeah.
sign. So, all right.
Yeah.
Don't feel
That's
bad.
not
no, that's not
Yeah,
good
it's
at all.
It's a good thing, it's a good thing to know that, now, like now you know, but it's not it's ultimately, yeah, it's the retiree's responsibility to
Definitely.
know what they
And
need
it
to
may
do.
be still worth it to them to pay the after-tax contributions. Because the other thing our staff will do is show you, your benefit would increase by this much per month, and that would pay off that amount you didn't pay in 6 months or a year, or whatever it is. So they can do the math.
After that, they even get the employer contributions, right? If they, like pay themselves, if they didn't do the.
The employer contributions also are due to us.
Yeah.
They have to pay all, no, they don't.
No, the employee does not, the employer will be responsible whether the Form 129 has been submitted 90 days in advance or not. They're still gonna be, if they choose to do the term pay contribution, the employer contribution will be due to TRS, so, yeah.
Yeah, the form is an IRS thing, they just say if you guys want to withhold the contributions that will be due on a pre-tax basis, it has to be done 90 days in advance.
Yeah.
The decision has to be made 90 days in advance. So they can still do it, like you said, they just have to pay it out of pocket. And it's gonna be more. So,
And we have